Thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet, voice you know with the news you trust studio, sponsored by BASF, where you can count on the trusted performance of Allevo seed treatment to protect your soybean crop. Good Monday morning, everyone. Hope you had a great holiday and holiday weekend. As we check into the latest, everything at the Thanksgiving table has a story, from the food we share to the linens beneath it, and each of the stories starts on an American farm. As families gathered around the table on Thanksgiving, we were reminded that every meal begins with the incredible people who keep our country fed, fueled, and clothed. America's farm and farm ranch families, from the field to the dinner table and the many steps in between. These hardworking men and women make it possible for us to share abundance, tradition, and gratitude from sea to shining sea. For these families, farming and ranching are more than a job, they're a way of life. The current state of the farm economy remains dire as high input costs and low commodity prices place a strain on producers' finances. This past Thanksgiving, as lawmakers and administration consider the path forward for emergency assistance for producers to bridge them to the next crop year, we want to take a moment to thank the hardworking men and women who make days like Thanksgiving possible. Where do some of the things come from for Thanksgiving, or what are the numbers like? 46 million turkeys are raised for Thanksgiving each year. Corn growers plant more than 90 million acres each year, supplying feed for livestock, renewable fuel, and ingredients for many Thanksgiving favorites. North Carolina alone grows about 70% of the nation's sweet potatoes. The cotton farmers produce about 13 million bales annually, supplying the fibers behind table linens, napkins, and cloths that make the day feel special. U.S. potato growers produce roughly 20 billion pounds annually, and that's a lot of mashed potatoes. The average U.S. wheat farmer produces enough grain each year to bake around 2 million loaves of bread. And America's sugar beet and sugar cane farmers grow roughly 9 million tons of sugar each year, meeting about 75% of America's demand for real sugar and providing the sweetness behind every pie, cranberry sauce, and holiday dessert. Today's weather brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Here's the forecast.
Mostly dry here as we start the week in Ohio. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at that forecast update after some snows this past weekend and a lot of cold air and strong wind. Honestly, it's a pretty benign day here to start the week today. We'll start with sunshine and clouds will increase late this afternoon. Light snow showers start to push into northwest Ohio near or just after sunset tonight, and then continue to spread across the state overnight through the first part of the day tomorrow. I'm not looking for a lot here, coating to an inch or two from I-70 northward. South of I-70, coating to maybe a few flurries here and there, so it's not a big event, but it is a precipitation. It is cloud cover. Those clouds break up toward the overnight Tuesday night. Moving into the rest of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, no major fronts coming through. Winds are going to be such that we don't see a lot of lake effect. Just on again, off again clouds for those 3 days with high pressure in control for Thursday. Late week, we see our next weather system coming up from the southwest. Clouds increasing of Friday midday and afternoon. Scattered snow showers starting to push into the state Friday evening. Rain and snow both can go overnight Friday night through Saturday midday. At this point, I do expect snow accumulations in parts of the state and better rain potential down south, but we're going to wait to see where this low really truly wants to track before calling snow totals again later this week. The rest of the weekend tries to dry down a little bit Saturday afternoon into early Sunday, but we see some lake effect potentially Sunday midday and afternoon. Next week, the week of the 8th, is going to be an on-again, off-again affair. Plenty of cold air in here. Temperatures remain well below normal, but we have some moisture at midweek, Tuesday night through Wednesday, and potentially another system toward the end of the week and weekend. I'm meteorologist Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. Let's check in with Chad Warner as he tells us more about developing markets for U.S. soybeans.
My name's Chad Warner, and I farm in Darke in Miami counties. So I farm with my son Garrison and my father Dwight. We farm about 1,800 acres of corn and soybeans. So on our farm, we raise food grade soybeans. They're primarily sent through Schooler Company and then go to Japan into the tofu market. So the Japanese they are very particular in what they want as far as high protein, large beans. This region of Ohio and western Indiana has been good for raising higher protein beans. I sit on the Ohio Soybean Council and also sit on WISH, which is World Initiative for Soy and Human Health. Through that, we go into developing countries to develop markets for soy and teach them how to improve their poultry and fish farms to incorporate soy into their diets as their protein source. That is just one way that we help increase our demand for soy for U.S. farmers. The biggest takeaway from my international trips has been developing those relationships with buyers and consumers of soy in those regions. Without this organization, we wouldn't be able to start those conversations to get them to buy our products.
And thank you, Chad Warner. Back with more after this.
Attention farmers, Jim and Jody Johnson are retiring and their premium equipment is heading to Purple Wave's December 30th Ag Auction. Don't miss their 2024 John Deere ExactEmerge 1775 NT Planter and 2019 John Deere S760 Combine. This retirement auction features well-maintained machinery that's been part of a successful farming operation with equipment located in Osage, Iowa. Everything sells. Absolute no reserve to the highest bidder. Visit purplewave.com for details. Purple Wave Auction, straight, simple, sold.
Here's farmer and businessman James Wood.
We farm about 3,500 acres. There's pipelines everywhere. The contractor working on my property did not have the lines located before he began work, and it resulted on a strike on a natural gas pipeline. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but it could have been much worse.
Never assume the location or depth of underground lines. Always call 811 or visit clickbeforeyoudig.com before you start work. A message from the Pipeline Operators for Ag Safety campaign.
The United States could see reduced imports of Canadian petroleum, steel, and lumber in the coming years as the Canadian government looks for ways to reduce its dependence on U.S. trade. This past week, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney made multiple changes to government policies to boost domestic oil, steel, and lumber industries and diversify Canadian exports away from heavy reliance on the U.S. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has laid out multiple plans to diversify its oil trade while also propping up steel and softwood lumber industries, which have been hard hit by U.S. tariffs. Each of these moves could shift trade for each of those critical commodities away from the U.S. in the coming years, which could increase prices for those products in the U.S. as a result. As the United States transforms all of its trading relationships, many of our strengths, based on those close ties to America, have become our vulnerability, Carney said. Last year, more than 3/4 of Canadian exports went to the U.S. That includes more than 90% of the country's lumber, aluminum, and steel exports. Over 95% of Canada's energy exports went to the U.S., Carney said. This tight interdependence, once a strength, is now a weakness, Carney said. Declaring the need for a new strategy, Carney signed a memorandum of understanding with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith to build a new oil pipeline through Western Canada to boost oil and natural gas that could ship as much as 400,000 barrels per day out of British Columbia, destined for Asian markets, the Memorandum of Understanding stated. Canada exports an average of 4.2 million barrels of oil daily to the U.S., which accounts for roughly 20% of total U.S. petroleum consumption. That plan would essentially reduce exports to the U.S. by about 10%. Today's market analysis is brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company. Excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. For marketing information of your beans to LDC, call 574-566-2113. Here's Ryan Martin.
Grain markets finished mostly higher on Friday. It was a shortened trading day due to the holiday that influenced everything late last week. Low volume trade as well. Now, I will tell you that once we get into full trade this week, that's where the rubber really is going to meet the road, and we'll see whether the bump up that we saw in low volume trade last week is going to be able to hold. Flash reported sales last Friday. Really didn't see much of anything, but I do think that we'll get some news of China being a little bit active late last week. China's soybean purchases probably in response to U.S. President Trump's offer to convey China's geopolitical angst to Japan regarding Japan's military support for Taiwan. Within an hour of a Trump and Xi call, Trump did speak with Japan's prime minister. Japan has not offered to change its position on Taiwan if China invades. Now, China has not asked for new U.S. grain price offers since last week's political purchases of 12 to 15 cargoes. China did secure and will ship 10 to 12 cargoes of U.S. sorghum from January to March. To date, the demand has not been enough to support Plains sorghum basis improvement, but it is interesting. China's interest in sorghum waned late last week. December deliveries as of last Friday, 199 contracts of soy meal, 447 contracts of soy oil, 80 contracts of corn, 34 contracts of spring wheat, and no Chicago December wheat was tendered. South American weather forecasts were talked about a lot late last week. They are favorable, no lasting long-term heat, a favorable mix of sunshine and rainfall. That should allow South Brazil and Argentina farmers to finish spring seeding. Northern Brazil crops are receiving near to above normal rainfall heading into the reproductive phase. We will be hearing about early harvest on soybeans out of Brazil's central and northern regions, probably within about 6 weeks or so. I'm Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. The live cattle complex ended the week on a strong note as traders were pleased to continue to see widespread technical support and interest, which ultimately led to the market's higher close. It wasn't because of better market fundamentals that the complex closed higher, as cash prices were weaker this past week and boxed beef pictures traded mostly lower, but because traders took note of the positive message Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins had to share earlier in the week. The market closed higher. The lean hog complex ended the day mixed, with contracts closing along both sides of steady. Following Wednesday's big jump, the market didn't see the same level of support on Friday, as traders weren't confident that the market possessed enough support to push the contracts any higher ahead of the weekend. I'll have the overnight figures after this.
Did you know veterinarians touch our lives each day, whether we own a pet or not? From safeguarding against diseases to making sure our food supply is safe, to treating the family pet or the farm's food production animals, veterinarians are on the front lines. I'm Dr. Kevin Fitzgerald from Animal Planet's eVet Interns. Veterinary medicine is more than you think. Learn more at avma.org. A public service message from the American Veterinary Medical Association and this station.
Today's market's brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Overnight at the open, December corn up a half at $4.36, March up 1/4 cent at $4.48, and May $4.56, up 1/4 cent. January soybeans $11.38 3/4, up 1. March 11.46 3/4, up 3/4, and May is unchanged at $11.55 1/4 cent. July new crop wheat up 2 3/4 at $5.57 3/4. September up 2 at $5.69 3/4. In livestock, on Friday's close, we had December cattle closed $215.57, up $4.55. February up $4.92 at $217.85. And April up $5.30 at $219.55. Lean hogs were mixed, with December up 17 at $80.60. February down 37 at $81, and April $84.90, down 45 cents. March feeder cattle followed cattle up $8.80 at $317.85. The April was up $8.92 at $316.62, and May up $8.72 at $314.57. Be sure to check out our website for some of the latest happenings and videos that are posted there. You'll get all the latest markets, news, and weather anytime you check in at ohioagnet.com. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, everyone. I'm Dale Minyo. This is the Ohio AgNet.